One of the most important element of quality management system standard ISO 9001 2015 is property belonging to customers and external providers, clause number 8.5.3. When the standard was introduced, the title of this clause was Control of Customer Supplied Product. The concept was revolving around the products. Let me give an example to explain this. What was happening or what happens is the customer sometimes provides you the product that forms part of the final delivery by the contractor or by the organization. For example, a contractor is doing flow line construction. So the customer is giving the line pipes for them to use them for constructing the flow line or the pipelines. So the pipes are customer supplied product. So the organization was required to control products supplied by the customer so that they are protected and they are not damaged during their use by the contractor, by the organization, and they are verified at the time of receipt, so on and so forth. The service was not much in the site at that point of time because in the beginning, ISO standard predominant focus was on the product, which later on was expanded to include service as well. In the subsequent version, the title of the standard becomes Control of Customer Property. So there, the idea was customer can provide product, customer can provide other documented informations, even recipes, formulations, confidential drawings, and stuff like that, procedures, stuff like that. So those things are customers' confidential property. So it was not limited to product, it expanded, the scope expanded. So the clause title was changed to Control of Customer Property. In the latest standard, the scope has been further extended to include properties belonging to even external providers, the contractors or subcontractors of the organization. So the new title of this clause, 8.5.3, the title is Properties Belonging to the Customers and External Providers. So now it is not only the customer's properties, it also includes the properties belonging to the external providers. Let's have a look at the standard, what the standard requires. Before we go there, let me explain with some of the examples. And you have to interpret customer property in different circumstances slightly differently. I gave you an example that a customer is providing the pipes for the organization of the contracting company to construct the flow line or the pipeline. Now, if you go to a laundry or a dry cleaning shop, you give your suit for dry cleaning. They are doing a cleaning service and ironing. So for him, customer property for the laundry is your garments that you give for dry cleaning or ironing or washing. If you go to a hospital, the customer themselves become the customer property when the doctor or the surgeon is operating and doing a procedure. The patient becomes customer property. His or her organs becomes customer property. When a body mass is removed from a suspected cancer, which they subsequently send for biopsy, at that point of time, the body mass removed from the body of the patient is customer property. They have to protect them till they're tested. They have to preserve the body mass that do not decay due to improper storage or handling. When in a pathological lab, your samples are taken for blood or whatever, urine, for example, these are customer properties. They need to be properly identified, tested, so that your report only comes to you. Imagine you go to a barber shop for a shave. Imagine the sharpest of the razor is sliding on the weakest part of the body. With a small error, a disaster can happen. They can slit the throat accidentally. You can imagine how serious is their work. So the customer property is the customer himself. Now imagine you are doing some work in a oil and gas facility. Your company is provided with some space and certain scope of work, which is an area within the larger facility. You've got adjacent facility, and you have to protect that adjacent facility that belongs to the customer. So the property, in this case, the whole facility belongs to the customer. When you are flying in the aircraft, you become the property of the customer. That's the reason the air hostess comes and tells you, please fasten the seat belt. Otherwise, just imagine in case of an accidental brake that apply, the person will fly at 400 kilometers on the runway. Just imagine what a disaster can happen if the seat belt is not fastened. So customer property is to be considered in a different context like this. I'll give one more example, which is very relevant. Say you save money in the bank. You deposit your gold jewelry in the locker in the bank. Now, you deposit your precious gold jewelries in the locker of a bank for which you pay. For the bank, your jewelries are the customer property. You are paying them for preserving them and for keeping them safely. So they have to take all measures and cares to protect that your property remains safe with them. Let me give you an example of property belonging to an external provider. For example, you have got a new contract. You have got some cranes and other equipment. And for that momentary surge in demand, you found that you have to hire a few compressors and few cranes. Those cranes have been hired by you for your work under your control. So therefore, controlling those property, imagine a compressor that you have hired does not belong to you, that belongs to your supplier. So it is imperative, it is extremely important that these properties are also controlled. We will look at the standard, we'll look at ISO 9000 clause number 8.5.3, what the standard requires an organization to control properties belonging to customer and external providers. ISO 9001:2015, clause number 8.5.3, property belonging to customers or external providers. The standard requires the organization shall exercise care with property belonging to customers or external providers while it is under the organization's control or being used by the organization. Quite plain and simple, nothing to explain. What the standard requires is the organization shall identify, verify, protect, and safeguard customers or external providers' properties provided for the use or incorporation into the products or services. Sometimes the product can be incorporated into the final product and services offered by the customer. For example, the pipes were provided. Now, this has been used to construct the pipeline. So the pipes have been incorporated into the final product or services. Now, sometimes it can be used. A special tool can be offered by the customer for use, or an external provider's product could be a crane or a compressor or any other welding machine, for example, those kind of things which does not belong to the organization, that has been hired or taken from the customer or external providers. What is required is you have to identify them. The organizations need to identify that this property belongs to this particular provider or the customer. And they have to verify that everything is fine at the point of receiving. So it's important that there is a listening inspection performed to make sure that the products that was provided by the customer is good and acceptable and can be used. In case of any problem, it is important that those things are identified and communicated to the customer. They have to be protected, obviously. The property belonging to the customer or external providers need to be protected and safeguarded from deteriorations or damages. Now, it says more control when the property of a customer or external provider is lost. It is possible that some property provided by the customer is misplaced, lost, damaged. During the construction, some pipe got damaged. Some of the product got lost or damaged or otherwise found unsuitable for use. For example, you found some pipes with damage. When the pipe came, they were having some damages. Or when the compressor was received, that was making some noise. There was some malfunctioning. So all those things need to be reported to the customer or external provider and retain documented information of what has occurred. So in case of such problems, you need to communicate with the customer and keep record of such inspection that there was unsuitability. So the organization shall report this to the customer or the external provider, and those information has to be retained as documented information. Our case study in our lead auditor program includes servicing of vehicles. You must have seen when you are giving your car for servicing that the service provider performs a thorough check. They move around the vehicle, identify if there has been scratch or damage or any condition that they observed at the time you brought the car in to the service station. So they will document it and ask you to sign the documents, and these are the observation we have had at the time of receiving. When you sign this is in agreement and they have communicated this. It is the same thing when you hire a car from a car rental shop, they will come and do a thorough inspection and identify the damages, scratches, if there was any, and you sign that, yes, this is the condition, I have got the car. Before you give it back, they will do a similar check, and if anything that was not documented in the earlier communication is arguably done when the vehicle was under your custody, for which you will be responsible. This is what the standard basically requires. The point I was telling in the beginning, the scope of the standard has increased to include customer or external providers' property can include materials, components, tools and equipments, premises where you are working, intellectual property and personal data. Let me give an example of a personal data. We are offering training services. There is a GDPR compliance. So the data of the learners are confidential information. So as I said, the scope of the coverage has increased, and this is included in the note. Note is not a requirement itself. It is just to clarify the requirement. The customers or external providers' property can include materials provided, components, tools and equipments, premises where you are going to work. For example, I've given an example that piping component and piping section replacement within a gathering center. So the gathering center itself is the customer premises, which you have to protect. Intellectual property, which could include their calculations, secret formulations, and stuff like that. A lot of companies are giving outsourced production, and they provide the recipe or formulation of mixing ratio of different components to make one product. So you need to control property, those intellectual property belonging to the customer, or even personal data. Personal data is very important. This was included a long time ago in American standard and Code of Federal Regulation, where the health data of a person who is getting the treatment will not be shared with them. This is a very confidential data. Imagine how you control personal data is extremely important. The person who has got detected with cancer, and if they get the information, imagine what is the trauma the person is going to go. Maybe We all know that we will die, but if somebody knows that in another 6 months, the person is going to die, you can imagine the trauma the person can go through. Also, the confidentiality of personal data, we have signed in some document called GDPR. A lot of learner trains, their results of the examination and the training is their personal information. And without their consent, we cannot even publish their pictures or photographs in social media for any other purpose. So we even take the permission how we will handle their personal data. So these are all part of property belonging to customers and external providers. So now I've explained that customer property or property belonging to the customer and external providers need to be identified, need to be verified, need to be protected, need to be communicated if you find there is something wrong. And such communications are documented, and documented informations are retained. Very important element of the management system standard. I have given sufficient example. I'm sure this requirement is absolutely clear to you.